Welcome to the AFR Saints channel, where we provide you daily content on your favorite team, the New Orleans Saints. Do us a favor and hit that subscribe button. Be sure to leave your comments below and smash that like button. Who dat? As we inch closer to the draft, there's this commonly accepted and understood belief that the Saints are going to take an offensive tackle at number 14 overall, as well they should. You are quite possibly looking at the end of Ryan Ramczyk's career. You don't have a left tackle. You whiffed on Trevor Penning. We all know the Saints need to be looking at offensive line. So every mock draft has the Saints taking a tackle at 14 and very likely a receiver at 45. It's just a matter of what receiver they take at 45 if it's there. And I don't disagree with that approach at all. And it's interesting, too, because a year ago when we looked at all the mock drafts, like every mock draft had the Saints taking Brian Brzee, right? 2 years ago, we saw Trevor Penning mocked to the Saints so often. It's like they've become really predictable now with Dennis Allen as opposed to when Sean Payton was here. So I ran across these odds earlier today. I think this is from sportsbetting.ag. So it was for every team, the odds of what they would do with their first-round pick. And offensive line, no surprise for the Saints, minus 250 was a big favorite. What surprised me, that was weird. What surprised me, well, hold on, Paul. I think we're going to get that screen back. I don't know what just happened there. What surprised me is that the second best odds for the Saints was actually defensive line / edge at plus 450. Receiver was actually the fourth highest odds because cornerback was next and then wide receiver. Quarterback, tight end, linebacker, safety, and running back. So again, remember, that's just the odds of what they would do at 14. Overwhelmingly offensive line. And then defensive line edge makes sense because there have been like some mock drafts where an edge rusher has been mocked to the Saints, like if Dallas Turner's there or Latu from UCLA or Jared Verse. So that does make a little sense. But I'm surprised to see corner 3 and then a receiver down at 4 because you do see some mock drafts that have the Saints taking Rome Odunze. I also saw one that had the Saints trading up for Malik Neighbors. So a little odd there. And I know sometimes when we've talked about these draft odds, I've felt some pushback from some of you who have said, like, why would you care what odds makers say about who's going to go where in the draft? Well, inherently, what you've seen is there's no value. There's very little value in betting the NFL draft anymore because everybody kind of knows now what's going to happen to a degree. The sportsbooks know what's going to happen, or they have a great set because they've got great inside information. That's how they set those lines because they're not going to leave themselves vulnerable. They're there to make money. So, yeah, they kind of do have a sense of what's going to happen. That's why they set the odds the way they do. I'm not saying like it's just 100% a lock there, but it's why you're even seeing some sportsbooks not offer odds on NFL draft props anymore. So it was interesting, though, to see defensive line because if we do agree the Saints are going to take offensive tackle at 14, receiver at 45, the one thing that's certain is the Saints aren't sitting on the sideline until round 5. Like, they're as impatient an organization in the draft as there is. They're aggressive. So they're not just going to sit there through rounds 3 and 4 and wait till the draft comes to them in round 5. And they're not going to make 4 fifth-round picks. So they're going to package picks and they're going to move up. The question is, for what would they move up? And I think defensive tackle could make the most sense. So we looked at this a little bit earlier today, and kind of like what prospects might be there for the New Orleans Saints. So let's take a look at this. Mel Kiper has 10 defensive tackles that would be day 2 options, so around 2 or 3. And of them, he's got Jerzon Newton out of Illinois, Ruke Arororo.
Nailed it.
Got it. Out of Clemson. We were watching YouTube videos in the break on the proper pronunciation of Ruke Arororo. Nailed it. Arororo? That would be awesome just to say.
Scooby-Doo drop. We're getting a Scooby-Doo drop.
Braden Fisk, Chris Jenkins from Michigan, Michael Hall, Mason Smith. So a lot of big names there. Muse, I'll throw it to you first here, since we kind of we looked at this. Look, the Saints stink in run defense. They were awesome for half decade where they didn't allow remember it was Samaje Perine with Washington in 2015. 2014 or 2015 was the last to rush for 100 yards in a game. And the Saints went like 5 years without allowing a 100-yard rusher. And the last 2 years, they've been 22nd and 24th in the NFL in rush defense. They stink. So they draft Brian Brzee, but remember, you've lost Sheldon Rankins, you've lost Onyemata, Malcolm Roach is gone. Is a free agent this offseason. He's left. So all you're left with is Brzee, Shepard, and Saunders, and that's really it. I mean, you got some practice squad guys as well hanging around Jack Heflin, but you're going to have to address that position and add bodies there. So first of all, like, would you want them to trade up day 2 for a defensive tackle?
I would, because I think, given what you just said there, with the amount of talent that Kuiper lists as potential day 2 guys, there seems like great value at that spot on day 2.
I think it depends where on day 2. And always when you're talking about a trade, what you'd have to give up to get there.
That's fair.
But very likely what it would be is you trade, like if you're going into round 3, you would very likely trade next year's 3, because you don't have one this year, and then probably one of those 5th-round picks, like a later round pick this year, which I'm okay with that. You just don't have a 3 next year. Now you're putting yourself in the same situation. But if it's someone you think helps you now, and there's good value there, no one ever remembers what you gave up when you hit on the pick. You know what I mean? Like, everyone is going to talk about what Denver gave up for Russell Wilson because he stunk in Denver. Nobody talks about the Kings' ransom Atlanta paid to move up to draft Julio Jones because he had a Hall of Fame career there. You know what I mean? So it's negligible if it works. All right, start us off. Who are the guys you looked at?
Well, let's start with our guy, Ororo.
No, that was too many. That was too many.
It's 3. It's 3.
Ororo.
From Clemson.
Row your boat.
He makes a lot of sense for a couple reasons. Obviously, look, Clemson, through their run, defensive line has been a big reason for that. I mean, just look at the guys they've put in the league, including Brian Brzee. He was teammates with Brian Brzee.
Ooh, so that would be a good little tandem there.
You have that little synergy potentially there. He's obviously got good size, and the one thing he really has is a high relative athletic score, which we know the Saints love.
They love a
in
good
fact,
RAS.
Matt, it's the highest among defensive tackles.
You shut your face.
In the NFL draft this year.
Welcome to New Orleans, Ruke.
Run stuffer. You're looking at
by the jersey.
25 tackles for loss throughout his career, and he also had 5 sacks last year, so potential for the pass rush.
Okay.
I think he's a complete player you could find there at defensive tackle.
How about Chris Jenkins at Michigan?
Yeah.
PFF has him in the 99th percentile in run stop rate. Right at 300 pounds. 8 TFLs at Michigan, so you're talking about a guy that can push the pocket. I just think about that Michigan defensive front and how they dominated this season. I mean, Michigan, all they had to do was run the ball. Like, they were this Michigan team. I drew this comparison at the end of the regular season. They were 2011 LSU. If 2011 LSU had gotten the rematch against Oklahoma, or gotten the game against Oklahoma State instead of the rematch with Alabama, that's what Michigan was. A team that couldn't throw it, didn't need to throw it, was a dominant running team, and their defense was overwhelming. It showed you can win at this level in 2023 or now 2024 with a great running game and a dominant defense. And Jenkins was a huge part of that. I mean, now look, the Saints love to draft Ohio State players. I don't know if they draft a Michigan guy, but he would be one that you could certainly look at. All right, who you got?
Well, you mentioned Ohio State players. Michael Hall Jr.
Oh yeah, never mind.
Is another.
I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to scratch Chris Jenkins off my list.
Is another really interesting prospect for them. Weight's kind of fluctuated a little bit with him throughout the combine and his pro day, but comes in right around 295, 300 pounds. Maybe a little inexperienced, Matt. Only 28 games played in 3 years in Columbus, but was productive. 10 tackles for a loss over the course of those 3 years, 6 sacks. So a guy that can definitely move the pocket, and another high relative athletic score as well at 9.57 for this guy. And he went to Ohio State. He's checking 2 boxes.
That's huge. If you've got the relative athletic score and went to Ohio State, you're basically in. The last guy that I would talk about is Braden Fisk. And just candidly, this would be my pick. And maybe it's just the familiarity because LSU went hard after him last year in the offseason. I mean, everybody did. And then we got to see him at Florida State, and he had a dominant season. He is the quintessential example of a guy that when he was 18 wasn't a great player, wasn't a highly rated guy, grew up as he went through 4 years of college. Because of the portal, had the opportunity to go to Florida State, and he dominated there on a great defense and a great team. There might be some concerns coming out of the combine about his size, 6'3", 292, but again, the relative athletic score at 9.89, and he was a dominant interior pass rusher. If Braden Fisk is like, this is a guy who, when we looked at mock drafts early in this process, you saw floating around the end of round 1. And now he's bumped basically into a day 2 guy since the combine. And maybe it's because of all of that, the size, that whatever. Did you do a good 3-cone drill? I don't know. I don't care. Maybe it's a small sample of just having been the 1 year in Power 5 football. But Braden Fisk is a guy, to me, that has proven he can stop the run. He can rush the passer from the interior. He's reliable. He's durable. He's won at all levels. Like, if Braden Fisk is hovering around late round 2, early round 3, and I don't know if he will be, but if the Saints moved up to take Braden Fisk, I'd be pumped with that. Like, if you go dominant offensive tackle at 14, best receiver available at 45, then you trade up to take Braden Fisk, I would come out of this draft feeling like you checked all your boxes, except maybe at safety. Did you have any more?
No, that was it.
Okay. What do you think they do?
I think
You can kill the music.
Okay.
You can kill the music.
I think if they're going to trade up, and they will, I think that is a position that makes a lot of sense. And I think it is either Braden Fisk or Row from Clemson.
I just don't know if Braden Fisk can be on the board. I just don't know that I buy that he's just lingering around out there in round 3. I mean, there's always guys that surprise, and for whatever reason, he's fallen. But what's the old, like, the eye in the sky don't lie? You put on the tape, the kid can play. Like, he can flat out play, and it's just very hard for me to believe he's going to be there. And we talked about Mason Smith as well as a day 2 guy that Kuiper has. Mason seems like every mock draft you see now, he's a top 50 guy. He's in that. Yesterday when we looked at him to
42.
Houston at 42. So we talked about before the combine. He was the guy that had the huge boom potential. Go to the combine, be a physical freak, and somebody's going to fall in love with you. In the same way the Saints fall in love with Marcus Davenport and Peyton Turner. Like, someone's going to fall in love with Mason Smith. They're going to pick him early. So I don't know that that's going to be a possibility as well. But some of those guys are hanging around into round 3. Saints could maybe get a steal there. Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact, and be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.